Hi, welcome back. This is coming to the end of our unit on ethics and our class in philosophy. So last time we looked at the major secular ethical theories. Today I want to talk about the natural moral law, which is an ethical system that has God as the creator of human nature. And this natural moral law is going to talk about human nature and morality that is derived from our nature. Now, this is a summary. In my ethics course, PHI 105, I go into each of these in great depth. So this is just a summary of what the natural moral law looks like. It's based on human nature, and it's derived from human nature. So if you think about what it is to be a human, and humans do have a nature in this view because God created humans with a nature. But it doesn't go into special revelation or scripture. So this moral law is assuming God as a creator, but it doesn't go into specifics about who that God is, although it gives an application where we could argue with people who disagree about the nature of God. So the first one is about the good in God. By nature, we make choices concerning means and ends. Now you have to think about that. Is that true? Do humans make choice? Is choice a universal among human beings? Yes, it is. We make choices between means and ends. The end in itself is the good, and the good is grounded in human nature. Why? Because the good for a being is according to the nature of a being. Now, in this view, human beings are rational, and they were created that way. How do we get rational? We were created by God with that nature. So God, as creator of human nature, is the determiner of good and evil for humans. Why? God created human nature, so God created what the good is based on that human nature. So if we're rational, it's good for humans to use their reason. And if you use reason to the fullest, you grow in knowledge of the nature of ultimate reality, right? You grow in the knowledge of God. The opposite is evil. So evil is going contrary to your nature. It is the failure to know God. Remember, we talked about this in theism. Good and evil, moral evil. All right, so that's the first one, the good in God. The second moral law is on the nature of thinking and the nature of God. By nature, we think. Is that true? Do you think? Are you thinking right now? And thinking by nature is presuppositional. This is the method we've been using all semester. We think of the less basic in light of the more basic. So more basic first, less basic. Now we're going to apply that to discussions about God. The infinite and eternal are more basic than the finite and temporal, conceptually. We are not to think of the infinite, eternal, and unchangeable God in light of the finite, temporal, changeable man. So this is where people disagree about the nature of God, and then you have divisions within theism, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's because God, the infinite and eternal, is more basic than man, the finite and temporal. But we reverse the order. We put humans as the determiner of good and evil, and humans as the conceivers of God. So we define God. This is called idolatry, when humans make a God. All right, so basically don't do that. Keep the order, the conceptual order correct, and you won't make a false God and then worship it and then fight over worshiping it. Okay, the third is on unity and integrity. Okay, people should have integrity. Do we want to make that a moral absolute? Do we want to make that one of those Kantian categoricals? Human nature is one. Is that true? Are you one person, or are you many people in one body? Well, they have medicine for that, you know. Human nature is one. We are a unity of diversity. We have many aspects to our nature. We have we're rational animals. That's diverse aspects, but we have intellect, emotion, will. We have our basic beliefs. We have our personality differences. We have background differences. We have different talents. We have different moods, but we're one person. And to be divided against oneself is self-destructive. So we are one. If we act as if we're two, it is destructive to our nature. We are opposed to ourself. It's a lack of unity in ourself. So how could we fix that? Integrity is a concern for consistency, which preserves the unity of human nature. So we could be consistent with ourselves. Remember, I'm always trying to help you become more conscious and consistent. I'm asking you to have integrity. You say this, you should do this. We should have integrity in all that we think and say and do. So this is an ethical concept. It's rooted in human nature. Can we make a moral law based on that? I think we can. Take the ethics class to find out how. Moral law 4 is on work and rest. Okay, work and rest are realities. By nature, work, or the work of dominion, which we should talk about. I think we may have talked about it somewhere along the way, but work of dominion is where we're developing the powers that are in the world and in ourselves. So there are things that need to be developed. We do that through work. You are developing your intellect right now through work. And work is necessary to bring human life into being. Did you know it's work to nurture a child and raise a child? And then the child has to take over and become an adult and develop and preserve their own being. So work is necessary to bring human life into being, to develop it, to preserve it, and for it to carry on new life. So work is necessary if humans are going to live. We'll say that. It's a universal. Work is not an end in itself, but it's the means to the good. So work isn't the goal of life. It's a means to the good. And the good is corporate. It's cumulative and it's communal. So the good isn't just for you as an individual. It's for all humans. It accumulates through history and it's shared by all people historically. So now you're going to want to know, what is that good? Well, I think if it's clear, you could figure it out. And if you want more, take the ethics class. When the good is achieved, man will rest from the work of dominion. So if work is not an end in itself, and work will have a natural end to it, then rest naturally follows. So, work and rest are aspects of human nature. Moral law 5 is about authority and insight. By nature, we're born ignorant. We need to be taught. Babies don't know anything. And we come to maturity through being taught. All human beings need to be taught. All human beings come to maturity by being taught. Authority in teaching is based on insight into the good and the means to the good. This insight is historically cumulative. So, those who teach should have insight into the good and pass it on to those whom they teach. And you get insight by it being passed on to you. This is like the cumulative wisdom of the ages. It doesn't originate with any individual. We learn it from the past and we pass it on to the future. This is how authority works. Authority based on insight must be honored. So where you have a person with insight into some aspect of the world, then you should honor that. But authority without insight must be changed where possible. If a person is not leading by insight, let's say they're leading by might, personal authority, or their feelings, maybe they're leading out of emotional manipulation, we should seek to change that if we can. Sometimes we can't. Sometimes we have oppressive circumstances where there's a lack of insight and they're over us. Now, sometimes we can change it, sometimes we can't. When we can't, we have to just live with it. Okay, moral law 6 is part of suffering, which we'll get to soon. Moral law 6 is on human dignity and rationality. We are born human. Is that true? Are you born human? With a dignity which distinguishes humans from animals. So humans are distinguished from animals insofar as humans have rationality. And that's what gives us dignity. Human dignity consists in the capacity to understand by reason. This is a uniquely human capacity. It gives humans dignity. We are to affirm human dignity in man's ability and responsibility to understand what is clear to reason. So all humans have the ability to use reason to understand what is clear, and we should treat all humans with that dignity. So this has applications for things like murder, war, abortion, euthanasia, suicide, racism, sexism. All of these isms have dehumanization in there. It's a denial of our ability to understand what is clear to reason. And we also dehumanize when we deny the responsibility to understand. So we think, oh, you can't understand it. And we don't hold people accountable. So 2 aspects to affirming human dignity. We affirm that the person can see what is clear if they wanted to, and they're responsible for seeing what is clear. And if they don't see it, it's because they don't want to, and they should want to. So there's responsibility is located in the dignity of man. And I'm saying man as all of humanity. I know it's maybe bothering you, maybe it's not PC, but it's old school for saying humanity, all of us. Moral Law 7 on spiritual fidelity, faithfulness, and infidelity, unfaithfulness. And it's going to carry over into our relationships. We are born of a sexual union between one man and one woman. Is that true? Think about it. It's a universal. A sexual union is a sign and seal of love. Is that true? We've talked about this before. A sign. It's not the reality. It's a sign. And in this love, of which sex is a sign and seal, you seek the good for and with the other person. That's what love is. So love is 2 people, well, in this context of a relationship, 2 people seeking the good so that they are united in person. And a sexual union is what consummates marriage. You're united in body. So you're united in body and soul. And this is the marriage relationship. We are to avoid infidelity, failure to love the other, by pursuing spiritual fidelity, love for the good. So if you love the good and you're faithful to the good, you will be faithful to the person you're married to. Okay, there's so much more we could say about that, but I'm going to leave it for the ethics class. Moral Law 8 on talent and value. Okay, so remember we're talking about based on human nature. We are each born with talent. Is that true? Does each person have talent? Well, what is talent first? Given in the uniqueness of one's being. Is each person unique? I have a student arguing with me that says we're not unique. And if we're not unique, then you have no unique talent. I don't think it's true. But it's because he's arguing from a different worldview, one which doesn't have God creating human nature, one in which humans are a product of nature, and as products of nature, no aspect of nature has talent. It's just matter, right? So remember, this is a view that has God, and God is giving humans talent. So we're each born with talent, given in the uniqueness of one's being. Talent is an ability to achieve some aspect of the good for the benefit of all. Perhaps my talent is teaching students philosophy. I have the talent. I found myself with it. I didn't go, what can I do with my life? I just discovered philosophy one day and I loved it, and others saw that I was good at it, encouraged me in that talent, nurtured me in that talent, and helped me so that I could help you. So I could seek the good for myself, and I could develop this talent so that I could share it with you. So talent is an ability to achieve some aspect of the good for the benefit of all. We are to develop our talent in pursuit of the good in service to others. Now, maybe you want to say, no, it's for me. Well, did you get it? Look, I mentioned my story. I discovered philosophy, and guess what? People have been doing philosophy for thousands of years, and I benefit from that. I have philosophy privilege. So it's not just an individual thing. Others have worked. I am benefiting from that work. I give back now to others. So this is where we can recognize there is such a thing as privilege. We do inherit things that we didn't originate, and the way we can deal with our privilege is by passing it on to others, using it for the good. So you don't have to just feel guilty like, oh, I have all this privilege. Say, no, I have this privilege and I am going to use it to further the good, to add to the good, so the kids in the future have even greater privilege. Maybe you don't have privilege. You have to work extra. You know what? That's a virtue as well. So I don't want you guys to feel bad. Moral Law 9, on truth and justice. So here we get to talk about justice. We could have such a great discussion if we were together. We're born equal. Is that true? Well, if you are a rational animal and all humans are rational animals, yes, that's true. We're born equal. But we do have inequalities. Remember, we have our different basic beliefs, different personality, different background, different talents, different mood. So we are equal in the most basic sense. And in justice, equals are to be treated equally at the most basic level, equally human. Truth is necessary and sufficient to prevent and to correct justice. So to correct injustice, sorry. So in order to have justice, social justice, individual justice, we need truth. Truth brings things that are hidden to light. We are to prevent and correct injustice by knowing and speaking the truth. So individually, we are responsible for knowing the truth, speaking the truth, and that's how we bring about justice and social justice. We know the truth, the whole of your life. And that's how you will be a just person and promote justice in society. Injustice happens when there's falsehoods being spoken, particularly about human nature. Oppression is because we aren't acting according to our nature as rational beings. We're using force, and we're not treating others as having the capacity and responsibility for knowing. And so we don't treat people with dignity, and we oppress, and there's injustice in the world because of that. It comes from false worldviews. Okay, I'm off my hobby horse now. It's because everyone wants justice, but nobody wants truth, and you can't separate the two. Moral Law 10, on contentment and the good. So this is where, if you're going into Stoicism, this is an alternative, okay? If you're struggling with, I need some, guidance in my life and how to deal with suffering and the hardships, this is an alternative to Stoicism. It recognizes the same truth, just gives you a different alternative way of dealing with it. Okay, we're born changeable. Is that true? Do you change your mind? Yes, it's a universal. We're born changeable. We're changeable in our understanding, of good and evil. Discontentment arises from a misunderstanding of good and evil. So it's going back to our view of the good. If you're discontent, if you're unsatisfied, if you're unhappy, ask yourself, why? Is it because I think I can't have the good? Maybe you have a mistaken view of good and evil, and it's causing you to suffer. It's not the suffering in the world, it's in yourself that's causing the suffering. Moral evil serves the good by deepening the divine revelation. Remember in theism where we talked about God allows evil to deepen the revelation, and if the knowledge of God is the good, then God allows evil to deepen the good? That's going back to this. Natural evil serves to restrain, recall from, and remove moral evil. So that's also going back to the theism discussion we had. So moral evil is serving the good, and natural evil is serving the good. So if we understood evil properly, we'd see evil is for the good. The world's not against us. The world is for us. We are to be content in all circumstances by pursuing what is truly the good. So suffering is a callback. Remember, natural evil is a callback to get you to stop and think deeply about your view of the good. And in that sense, suffering is merciful. It's a merciful callback. Maybe we're suffering because we have a faulty view of the good. Suffering should be like a red light flashing, going, warning, warning, warning. And you're like, warning, what is my view of the good? All right, so I would say let your suffering serve you. Let your suffering cause you to think deeply about what the good is. And if you haven't figured out what the good is yet, then perhaps you should take the ethics class. I'm going to pause here. This is the end of the ethics section. What we looked at was a definition of ethics, the three main concepts of ethics. We talked about the necessary conditions for rational justification. We talked about the major secular ethical theories not based on God, and then we looked at the natural moral law, ethical principles based on God, if God were creating. So now you have to figure out, okay, I've gone through ethics, and I understand my view of the good is based on my view of the real, and I don't know, have you answered that question, what is real yet? I think I'm going to make one more video that's going to wrap up the entire semester. I'm going to pause here with the ethics. I hope that you have thought a lot about this and will continue to think about it. It is a lifelong pursuit, and we will be suffering for our whole life, and that will press us to think about the good for our whole life. So I hope you find the good. If not, I'm around. Come talk to me.